We'll say your calendar for 2020. Calendar. Did someone? Right. No.
Make noise.
It's okay.
Now it seems like it's okay. Everybody's here, we'll get started. Get started, it's 6:32. So, to get a motion to approve the minutes from November 27th. Anyone have any comments?
Good.
I'll second.
All in favor?
All in favor?
Aye.
It's passed. All right, so for the December meeting, we have December 5th. That'll be our next meeting. It's the one we have a quorum for. I haven't been able to get a quorum for any of their meetings in December.
Not the 15th.
Not the 5th. Well, I thought we could do the 15th, but unless Joanne can make it, then I don't know that we have a quorum. So I'll reach back in touch with her again, but I think it might just be the 5th. So then that brings us to the 2024 meeting dates. I was hoping that we could meet twice a month, just until we get through the chapters. So we did the first Friday, or the second Friday and the fourth Monday of the month, so kind of breaks it up a little bit. I know that there were some dates that people could make and some dates they couldn't, so we'll send this out to everybody and have people let us know what days they can make and what days they can't make, and then
Realizing that's very tentative at this
that it's
point.
very tentative for just like January, February, to at least get those 2 months nailed down. So we'll send out all the possible dates and people can sign up and we'll set our meetings based on when we think we can get a quorum. So these are just.
And you envision us meeting through December?
I honestly don't think we're going to end up going all the way through December, because what we need to do is finish going through our chapters, finish revising the draft, and then we'll all look at it over together, make sure there's no other additions or changes we want to make to it. And then once we all agree, then we'll send it to the town board, and then they'll do a public hearing process on it. So once we send it to the town board, this committee can kind of dissolve.
Okay, so first we have to go through this draft.
Yeah.
Then that will be revised, and will you give it to the consultants that we work on?
Yeah, so as we finish these chapters, once we get done with all the chapters, we're going to send it to the consultants. They're going to take all of our comments and edits and put it into the draft and then give it back to us. We'll look it over again, make sure they got all of our corrections correct. And then at that point, we can decide if we think we're good with it, and then we can move it on.
This came up before, but can they do a track change or something so we
They'll
can,
do a whole summary sheet of what changes they made in
Okay.
each
chapter? All right, that would be
And there will
helpful.
be an opportunity for public content during our second review?
No.
No.
Well, once we get that draft back, and we're all comfortable with it, we feel like it's all been done correctly, then we'll post it on the website.
Okay.
And then, you know, if we give it to the town board, then that would be the
Public
chance
hearing.
for the next public
Yeah,
review.
yeah.
Yeah.
And there'll be hearings during. the
Yeah, there would be a series of public hearings. There'd be like one in the auditorium, at
the
least one in
vision,
the
yeah.
auditorium. And
Would this be spring, summer?
Spring.
yeah, it would be in the spring, probably spring into summer, depending on how much feedback there is and how many.
So we can hit the people that aren't here right
Yeah.
now.
But it all then gets handed over to the town board for them to manage,
And then they manage it after that.
Right.
not this.
So when it's a draft back and we don't think they've responded to what we've sent them, would we have another go at it? How?
Then we can continue making changes on
Okay.
it.
All right.
If we feel like it doesn't reflect the changes that we discussed as a group, then we can make more changes and send it back to them.
Okay.
Say, you missed it on these things. And then when we're all comfortable with it, we feel like it's reflected our conversations, then we send it to the town board. And then it starts like the public hearing review process. All
Okay.
right. Without further ado, chapter 7. All right, so chapter 7 is the natural resources and water quality chapter. So I'll start by going over the summary of the existing findings board. There weren't a lot of red dots on there. One of them is over quantity of water on the island, and I think what we need to make sure we explain very well is that we have a lot of quantity on the island, it's just not in all the right places. So in the center of the island and the aquifer itself, we have a large volume of water. It's just not evenly distributed to all the neighborhoods. So near shore, low-lying areas don't have as much access to that water as the center of the island does. So that's a clarification that I think we need to make in order to dissuade some of the confusion.
We
So
were mentioning about quality at that time too. Yeah, some of the new data is coming out, we have just recently, so should that be reflected in this, that we're discovering that maybe certain areas are not as bad as we thought, and other areas maybe haven't been tested at this point? But it's dependent on homeowners. Would that be something worthwhile putting in at this point, or keep it more general?
I think we can keep it a little more general, because I know that we're planning on doing more studies. We're doing water testing in the nearshore overlay for saltwater intrusion, things like that coming down, the line. And we cover that there's a quality issue because we do talk kind of in depth about the nitrate contamination and the other contaminants coming from septic water into the aquifer. So I think we kind of have that covered in here. All right, so some of the comments that were on the summary board were that, and they kind of centered a lot around Suffolk County Water Authority. The first one is that Suffolk County Water Authority isn't always the best solution. 2 people I know have received bills of $700 and $1,000. Be careful be careful of Suffolk County Water Authority. Most people don't realize that Suffolk County Water Authority is our water. And then someone agreed and they say it's the people's water, never give them ownership of the entire system, which has been suggested for a second system on the island, keep home rule. Suffolk County Water Authority needs limits. The town needs to make decisions, not Suffolk County Water Authority. Suffolk County Water Authority customer service is not good. Create a water district, including all Shelter Island, which will ensure that Suffolk County Water Authority manages the district and doesn't own it, thereby maintaining local oversight.
So let's highlight that. That's really the key here.
Key thing here.
The recommendation that the island should establish a water district for all areas that are not already covered by a water district. That recommendation is because of the following. That will ensure that SQUA manages the district but doesn't own it. Thereby, we retain local oversight if we establish a water district for all areas that are not already covered by a water district. It does not mean that we will pipe the island. That's not what it means. It means we will establish a district. No,
This is just
No.
one comment, but there are many, this is fairly controversial, so
that's just it. I'm not going to engage because we're doing a work session here. We can do that at the end. But I'm just making that clear. Now, do we need to say?
You would have to then define what forming a water district means
Right.
and doesn't mean, so
That's what I'm saying. Where
interpret
should
it.
we
Right.
make that clear in here? you know, in this
And we've
chapter.
talked about that in
It's-
other chapters,
We
which we said,
have.
which we talked about that wasn't clear.
Right.
It's not being clear because we keep getting hit by the public.
Right, we keep, that's a clear, you know, yes,
And here are the comments saying, don't give up our local ownership.
Right.
right.
And so it's coming back at us. And so we have to create clearer language.
Right. And just, now that we're in the correct chapter, where should we make sure that we have,
It's goal 7-3, plan for and develop water supply
okay,
to ensure residents have access to drinking water that meets all applicable local, state, and federal standards. So there's,
Well, this is going to run up against the private well faction that own their well and like it that way, whether it's poison or not. I mean, they just, that
Can you guys keep
ownership.
it down over here? I can't hear what's happening. I would appreciate that. I can't hear, I just can't hear what's happening.
Because we don't know what you review, what document.
We don't know
What you're reviewing, so that's what's confusing.
So there is a document that was created from all of these comments that are on these public boards. It's the first thing we start with each time we do
Display
this.
mode summary, right?
Yes. Comprehensive plan update, September 23rd, 2023, public workshop and hearing, display board summary. And we are on the one
Okay,
that is for
got it.
Chapter 7, Natural Resources and Water Quality.
I'm on page 9.
now Wendy, establishing the water district doesn't take away anybody's well. It's just saying this area is a water district that's filled with private wells, this area. That's gonna be, again, outside of the Heights, outside of West Nine, outside of Deering Harbor. Everything that's not on a water district is now in a water district called the Shelter Island Water District. And all that means is it's filled with wells.
Well,
And if Suffolk County Water gets enough, I'm gonna pick on Menantic Peninsula. If Menantic Peninsula wants, you know, they get 40% of the people there want,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
they need it. Suffolk County Water will have to sit down at the table with the town of Shelter Island because we are a water district. We don't do this.
And right now, they don't have to.
Right now, they just go in, they get the water. Oh, please stop it. Stop it or leave. Seriously.
You're not presenting.
so, no, you're not listening, Lily. So what a water district does, when we create a water district, it's hard to listen while you're speaking. When you create a water district, you're defining jurisdictional authority over an area. So the intention of creating a water district is to create jurisdictional authority so that the town of Shelter Island maintains authority or rule over that area. That's the purpose of creating a water district.
Just also, Wendy, as of now, without a water district, SQA, as of right, can just bring their pipes wherever they want on Shelter Island.
If there's enough homeowners. Yes, I do know that.
And that's just their policy. That's not written in stone anywhere. I mean, that's not like a legal, oh, they're prohibited if they don't meet the minimum, 40%. And in the case of areas where there's non-potable water, the number is actually 20% of the homeowners need to want to sign up. But that's their policy. So again,
Is that a Suffolk County policy?
it was water.
It's actually New York State gave them a mandate.
Yes.
So if there's an area of Long Island that does not have a water district, it defaults to Suffolk County Water Authority's water district.
Understood.
So essentially, anything not districted is the district of Suffolk County.
Potential for Suffolk County water to come in.
And that's by state law?
State.
That's their, and that's the enabling legislation for the establishment of Suffolk County Water
So
Authority.
setting up a water district entails what?
It would require that we have a public referendum, and the public would have to vote and approve the creation of a water district.
And
So-
all that entails.
In
which
order
is
to protect our
surveys.
rights and whatever.
Yes.
It would also, I'm sorry, it would include,
There's many steps involved to getting to where we even have a proposal to the
Right,
public.
okay.
Right.
Now, if they get this water district, does the town then have a responsibility to assure the quality of the water in the wells?
That's a really good
That
question.
is
If
a
Suffolk
really
County
good
takes it
question.
over, yes.
Well, yes, Suffolk County would, SQA would, but what about the town of?
In the well district, not in the
Yes.
pipe.
Right, right.
It's a good question. It's a really good question. We should find that out.
Yeah, it's something that we would have to.
something that might solve that issue is that the more testing we do with individual homeowners, the more we get people doing that, they're gonna take their ownership of what they have under their house. Personally, as, okay, I do have this, I have that, whatever it may be, that will help educate the process.
Trouble is you just don't own the water under your house.
I know, but I mean, it gives you an idea.
And to think of it as like, it has a property line on it.
Right.
So can you guys just point to the place in the document that documents the public comments and sentiment where it says the public sentiment favors the water district? Sorry, I don't have it in front of me, I just, you can point
On
it.
page 8,
So,
But where, are there less people there that are saying they want a water district?
yes.
I would already say no.
Thank you. It's not a democracy.
Yeah, so I mean, the comments that we're reading on the summary of key findings, all written on the side, are in support of creating a district to maintain home rule over our territory, is what the sentiment is written on the board. That's what we're going through, are the comments that were written on that first board.
We have, Wendy, a good connection both at Suffolk County Water Authority to ask your question, and also Andrew Chapman is on the Water Advisory Committee, and he is from the water, public water world. That was his career. So I think we ought to be able to get answered that question.
Which is our water board? Where do they fall on all of this?
They think that it's inevitable. It's inevitable.
What's inevitable?
Piping of a certain amount of Shelter Island,
Yeah.
especially in.
Well, places that don't have potable water, it's a real issue. I mean, your property is worth diddly squat if you don't have water.
And the idea that everybody doing their own little desal is actually long-term not tenable, because all you're doing is throwing more salt back into the aquifer, making it worse. And at some point, those systems, you can't work when the salinity is at X amount.
Right.
You know, so.
And aren't we also making the suggestion that we need to, our recommendation is that the town needs to look into, consider creating a water jurisdiction district. The word jurisdiction district is kind of floating back and forth. And then that becomes all the things then the town board has to go through. It has to go up for public referendum, then it's in the hands of the public to make those decisions and work with the town.
would it be worthwhile to say that in our, just so people understand,
I think that's what we
say
need to
form a
make
water district, all of a sudden it happens.
It's not just going to happen.
We need to find a way of, if this
Make
is.
it a jurisdictional water district.
Right.
But they have to understand what that means, because I wouldn't know what that meant.
Right.
It doesn't
What the
mean that you're
implication is.
automatically putting in infrastructure. It means that you're creating an area that you now control,
It's the same concept when we were talking about a sewer district.
right?
Island-wide sewer district doesn't mean we're plumbing anything. It just means we are establishing ourselves as an entity that will then make our own self-determination.
And so does that give the town then the right to legislate certain upgrades on cesspools or?
I mean, we have that right anyway.
Right.
What it does is it gives us more ability to like leverage funding, to
Okay.
access grant funding and things of that nature.
Because you're talking about a whole group, not just an individual person.
Exactly. So, you know, when it comes to a water district, it does a few things. It forces Suffolk County Water Authority to have to ask permission of the town to move into an area that is, you know, not serviced.
If that's what they want, but they still have to go to the town first.
Right, they'd still have to go to the town, and then they'd have to negotiate with the town, and they'd have to come to an agreement and come up with a contract for what services they would provide, the quality of the service.
Well, that's what we did with West Neck Water.
Exactly, because the town
we
owns
owned
West
West
Neck Water District. And so we made that deal with Suffolk County Water Authority that they would manage it. And so it would be the same thing. So for the majority of the island that isn't in a district, by creating a district, to make it so that Suffolk County Water Authority has to ask permission to enter into an area. Right now, there's no barrier to them providing water. You know, all they'd have to do is provide a well site for themselves. They could purchase land or lease land and put in some wells and, you know, service an area if there is demand by the homeowners in that area.
And that's 40% of homeownership, something like that.
40%, or if the water is not potable, 20%. So for areas with severe saltwater intrusion, which there are a few that are struggling with saltwater intrusion, you know, they can,
West Neck has had a request to add people to the West Neck Water District.
Right.
Because our water is tested. And despite the comments, I'm in that district, and I think it's vastly improved.
yeah.
I know people don't like huge corporations, but I feel more confident than an individual going out there kind of sticking a thing in the well and testing it, telling us.
And I think what some people didn't realize with the rate increase is that the rate increase is to cover brand new infrastructure, to completely upgrade your entire system.
Which is desperately needed.
Yeah.
But I know if you have a functional well, you might look at it a little bit differently.
Yeah, yeah. And that's another thing that we would be able to negotiate if we had a district, would be the conditions under which you would have to attach to the water supply. So we'd have to negotiate with Suffolk County Department of Health, but, one of the things is, Suffolk County Water Authority can only supply an area that they have the water, the volume of water necessary. So, you can make it that, the main line has to go through a certain area to get to the area that needs treatment and not force everybody along that line to hook up, because Suffolk County Water Authority may not have the volume of water necessary to service everybody. So you can make it a very specific area that's targeted. Like, for example, the Mananic Peninsula. You might have to go down the road to get there from wherever you're going to source your water, but that doesn't mean that everybody along the main has to hook up. You're targeting a specific area in need. So,
People
that gives
still would, there would still be a if you want to hook up, it's your choice. You don't have to hook up no matter where you are, even if your neighbors need it. Maybe for some reason you have magic water near your house or your well.
Well, in West Tech, we have to.
There is an exception
Okay.
to that. The exception is if it's a vacant piece of property and it is then developed, that I believe would have to hook up.
Have to.
I think
that
so.
would be a negotiation with Suffolk County.
Yeah.
And we're not allowed to switch the wells
Yeah.
either. We can't say, I want to do a well instead of getting billed. We can't do that.
No.
No, and I have to look at their
Even if you
reg.
had one prior to this?
Well, there must have been, because the house is way old.
Right.
So it must have had a well at some point, but we've been hooked up to West Neck for a long time. And you can't say, I don't want to pay, I'm just going to do my own water thing.
Right. Once you're in a district, you're like, once
in a
you're hooked up
district.
to the infrastructure.
I think that's the, but I guess if you hadn't already hooked up, you could maybe have that option.
Okay, that's what I was just wondering.
Usually they have you do water tests and prove potability.
Well, that's the kind of Q&A that the public would really need to
Sure.
see in detail so they can really understand what,
Is there a penalty for signing up later as a result,
Yeah.
your water?
good point.
So, I mean, it's really a recommendation to look into this much bigger discussion. All right, so continuing on the comments on that board, Suffolk County Water Authority is our water. It's come from local wells. It's not magical. However, professional testing and treatment are important for public health. Shelter Island Town should become its own water district, then negotiate with Suffolk County Water Authority. Quantity is also a problem if too much commercial and residential development as this plan sets stage for. Both quantity and quality must be protected, improved for areas other than the Heights, which should not pay for fixing problems elsewhere. So that's a confusion that, an island-wide water district, they're thinking it would also include districts that already exist, and it wouldn't. It would be areas not districted.
I hate to be that guy, but where were you reading from? I'm sorry.
On page
9 of 14.
of the display board summary,
Because that's not page 9 of the one I have, unless I have an outdated one.
Page 9 of 14.
Jay, do you have the one with
Or are
the, do
you on
you have the
page
one
9
with
at
the town seal on it?
Maybe no, I
No.
don't. I don't. That's the difference. Okay.
there's two of them. I was going to go to this one next.
Okay, all right. Okay, sorry.
That's okay. No worries.
There's just so many of these floating around.
I know.
Oh, I found the Times. Got it.
Okay. The next comment just says, climate change is now. Build a wastewater treatment district for center businesses, allow a town center to develop and thrive for our kids. Shelter Island Heights has and pays for its own water and sewer. We should not be forced to join an island-wide effort. It's a misunderstanding of the districting concept. We are all one community and all need to contribute to its health and well-being. So
Which
that's-
contradicts the previous comment.
Right.
Just pointing that out.
Yeah. So that's the summary of key findings board. So that was this one right here. So the next one.
Very Christmassy.
It's very Christmassy. It's embracing the winter season. All right. So now I'm going to kind of see. I think we should go to this. With the summary. So for goal 7-1, the goal is to ensure that all island residents have a ready access to drinking water that meets all applicable local, state, and federal standards. All groundwater shall follow the stricter of New York State ambient groundwater standards and guidance values or maximum contaminant levels to the greatest extent feasible and practicable. Water quality that is better than the existing standard should be preserved to the greatest extent feasible and practical. So the first one is continue to implement the Shelter Island ground surface water management plan. So 7.2 is the one that had most of the comments. So one of the comments on this recommendation board was there, right above that was that we must think beyond nitrogen. We must also stop depositing waste directly into the center of the aquifer. So that was one. And then 7A. So there were some comments on this one, but they don't really. This one just says it wasn't, they couldn't find it on the website. And the town system Nitrex is a boondoggle. What are the average nitrogen values in town water? So this is controversial, but not a lot of description on why people have problems with the ground and surface water management plan. I know the WAC is looking at it to update it with the most recent information that we have.
Can I say that majority of people are against it? I mean, I see more red dots than green dots.
Not
That's really not
necessarily.
accurate, but we'll discuss that another time. We know that people took their red dots and plastered them on there, so they don't one dot to one person. Unfortunately, that's sort of, you know, made the exercise a little difficult.
If it doesn't fit your narrative, then it's not accurate. If it fits, then it's accurate.
I'm not speaking to you, really, you need
Okay,
to
so
stop.
getting back
You
to the
just need
plan.
to stop or leave.
So,
You need to stop.
You need to stop.
Okay, you need to stop that arrogance.
No, you just need to stop. The rules are established here. We just do this. We're going through it.
Yeah.
You talk at
But
the
we
end.
probably have to
You
say
talk at the end. You talk at the end.
Yeah.
That's how it
No,
goes.
I want to talk when you discuss this.
Well, you can't. You can't, or the meeting
You
will
need to
stop.
change the rules.
Then we're
okay,
not
with the
going to.
public.
We're not going
I don't
to.
have time for this.
I don't either. The meeting will stop until you're done.
all right, goal 7.2, plan for and develop wastewater and water supply infrastructure to safeguard public health, protect the environment, and promote sustainable development. So the first one is consider establishing an island-wide wastewater management district or local community districts, also known as cluster systems. So some of the comments we received regarding this one are considering continue investigating methods to treat effluents from municipal buildings in the town center, partner with the Shelter Island Heights property owners to upgrade
Aging sewer treatment.
sewer treatment systems. That would mostly be along Bridge Street.
So the comment there was discussions are good, but Heights residents have a working system that they have paid for and should not be taxed for an island-wide system, which
Right.
certainly.
Oh, now we go. Found it.
So are they allowed to expand outside their geographical area?
The Heights?
They'd have to change their districting lines. So they'd have to apply to amend their district and expand it. So it would be a new application to the DEC and the Department of Health, and they would have to add,
Plus quantity.
and they'd have to upgrade their treatment plant if they were going to do it. In order to take in the additional flow, they'd have to upgrade.
And I don't think that, I think, the indication is the Heights is not interested in that right now, and I get that. But to put it in the plan to say that, discussions, who knows what changes? And so discussions should be considered if something changes for the Heights or for the island, where it becomes an imperative.
And it's something that's been discussed with the Heights over the years, and it keeps coming back up and circling around. And it's also one of those things that a partnership with the town would be beneficial for the Heights, because then they could qualify for grant funding, which they don't qualify for as a private entity. So in the future, it may be beneficial for them. They may want it, should something catastrophic happen to their plan, or who knows, they may want that partnership with the town. So I think it's worth not closing the door on the option.
Also vacant lots in the Heights, and they're being developed. So those people could probably elect to join the system,
Right.
and that would be,
I think they can automatically join the system, right, if they're in the Heights?
well,
I think so.
depends upon if they want to extend a line to where the house is. Some of these houses are far afield, down over the hill
Okay,
and heading towards Crescent Beach.
right.
This could be a technological problem to try and get the sewage up over the hill.
I thought they were already in the,
Physically, they're in the geographic area, but there's no pipes there for them. There's no sewage lines, therefore there's no.
but if they're
water
in
supply.
the Heights, by definition, wouldn't they then qualify? They might have to pay for the piping,
Well, I'm sure.
as you do in West Neck, but
It's going to make a change, it's going to be a substantial change.
If
There's
you-
quite a few empty lots.
they may or may not want to do
I
that.
think Stella has a
Stella
comment.
probably has the answer for us.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if you, I know it's a work session, but if you'd like, I'd be happy to jump in.
Yeah, if you have the answer to that districting question, that would be helpful.
Yeah, so it's a twofold question. The existing district, so everyone in the Heights has Heights water. Not everyone who's in the Heights has Heights sewer. So what happens is when you get to the upper Heights around Serpentine and like past Prospect, that's where the sewer district basically ends, because those properties are much larger. So there is room for them to put in IA systems if they're undeveloped or they have cesspools. The add-on, you were right, Meg, that if there was anything that was done with Bridge Street, we would have to amend the existing footprint of the district.
Right. Thank you, Stella. It's very helpful. Okay. So the next comment I have is that public water and sewer systems will destroy the island. And the next is no wastewater treatment facility or public water promote IAs and reverse osmosis. Then we need a map and scientific documentation identifying the environmental zones and listing flora, fauna, et cetera. This map should be a tool for all decisions on preservation.
We do have that map.
We do.
It's in this chapter, so.
Yeah, we do. We have one that really does outline all of the,
Heritage, right?
yep, yep.
The
And,
Natural Heritage Program provides that.
yep.
I'm really curious why people, maybe, I'm not expecting you to answer this, but why they, at least a number of them are against treatment facilities, public water, when it would be in their and the broader community's self-interest.
I've heard it's about development. It's
They think it's going to promote or,
being like,
well, that I understand.
yes, and that fear is deep-seated.
Okay, well, that I get, that I could
There's
empathize with.
also the issue of if you take water from X area and treat it, and then you want to dump the waste from that somewhere else, who's the
Oh,
recipient?
well, yeah.
And is it fair on Shelter Island to make one area, physical geographic area, the recipient for the waste from somewhere else? And that's an area we haven't gone to as an island yet. I don't know if we want to.
Fair enough, that's a good explanation.
But a lot of it comes into like density,
Yeah.
that really relies on zoning to not allow increased density. Right.
Yeah, it's really driven by zoning.
Zoning
yeah,
is what limits development,
And the enforcement thereof, yeah.
right? Let's see.
Disgrace that lawn irrigation.
Yeah.
It's a disgrace that lawn irrigation of any kind is still allowed.
What is, where's the recommendation here? On that topic, irrigation.
Next one says restrict irrigation in July and August.
Yeah.
It's a really interesting mix between people who are very much for this kind of legislation and control and those who are really against it. Again, we're kind of dealing with that community viewpoint versus my individual rights on my property to do what I choose to do.
And I think it comes down to also kind of a balancing of needs and fears. So, some people see the public health need for water and sewer, they understand the consequences, and other people may not be affected by it. So their concern more is with development or something of that nature. And, the thought that, added development could even exacerbate the water quality and all that. And knowing that they play hand in hand in some ways for the good and the bad. So trying to figure out how to balance that,
No,
and how to regulate it so that the regulation is effective.
So do we want to go to the irrigation,
It's goal 7.6.
7.6, yeah, and see if,
Yeah, that was when
What about goal 7.3, just skipped it?
we're not done yet, Jan. We're going,
Skipping to 7.6 all of a sudden.
Could we just
yeah,
follow.
yeah.
All right, revise the town law to promote cistern use and discourage trucked-in water for irrigation. So the town should update the irrigation law to eliminate well-drawn irrigation and promote the collection and capture of roof runoff into cisterns for the purpose of irrigation. Discourage and trucked-in water for irrigation can be a challenge, but is essential for sustainable water management. Trucking in water is an expensive and unsustainable practice, which also puts a strain on neighboring towns, water supplies, our road infrastructure, all while adding to ferry lines. I think part of the comments that I saw on this one was that, bringing in trucked-in water is also an industry. There are certain things you're always going to want to bring in trucked-in water for. You're going to want people to fill their pool for the first time with trucked-in water. If their cistern goes dry, you're going to want them to truck in water to fill it, not use their well to fill the cistern. So I don't think that the elimination of trucked-in water is reasonable or realistic. I think we're always going to want that alternate water source that's not island drawn. And, I think that by having more cistern use and collecting rainwater and using it in the dry seasons is beneficial for a number of reasons. And it would naturally reduce the amount of trucked-in water that we get, but I think there's always going to be a need for some trucked-in water on the
And I
island.
think that word reflects that, though, discourage trucked-in water for irrigation, not pools,
Right.
it's,
We wanna get-
and I think we're back to the education piece.
Yeah, I think it's a big piece of this is, what could I do other than order water from, Romani's or whatever that
Yeah.
big server is.
Want to choose better language, just firmer and
Yeah.
clearer rather than discourage.
Well, how firm do we want to be? Meg's making an argument that,
Well, I understand, but
Yeah.
just specifically you're saying for irrigation purposes
right,
Right.
or cistern
I
filling.
don't know, I think the way it's written right now is okay. I didn't see any opposition to the concept of eliminating well-drawn irrigation.
yes.
And I thought that might come up. I thought some people might have opposition to that, but they don't. So I think that the language is strong enough on that point. The town should update the irrigation law to eliminate well-drawn irrigation, or should it say the town must update the irrigation law?
Well, but the title says revise to discourage,
Mhm.
and then right below it, it says update the law to eliminate.
Well-drawn irrigation, yeah.
Yeah, there's two different, talking about trucked-in and well-drawn.
So I think what we need to do is change the headline, because the
Okay.
headline is not necessarily focused on trucked-in water, it's more on eliminating well-drawn irrigation. Right? Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. And whether you could still say you want to discourage trucked-in water, but at the same time, you're not eliminating it.
Yeah.
So it's really about, don't use your well to irrigate your lawn.
Right. It's really,
Let's say that.
it's,
Let's be clear about that.
yeah, it's sundowning the law that was on the books that they never actually went through with, which was that it should eliminate all well-drawn irrigation.
So there it is, revise the irrigation law.
Mhm.
There's no wishy-washy. To prohibit. Includes grandfathered systems, so it's
So
pretty strong.
you're changing the wording to say,
The golf courses.
and this one, you say prohibit.
Yeah, good question.
Good question.
I think we should leave it residential, all residential. Because there's always exceptions for even in DEC and Suffolk County, New York State law, for commercial, for agriculture, for garden centers, for golf courses to have well-drawn irrigation. So I think that we should make it so that it prohibits all residential well-drawn irrigation. Because then what do we do about Sylvester Manor and their 7 wells? Do you prohibit them from irrigating? They're a farm, but they fall under the same regulation that a golf course does, or a garden center, or, something like that. So,
Well, I get a farm, I'm having more of a trouble with the golf courses.
yeah, well, it's usually commercial. They usually allow commercial entities well-drawn irrigation.
So you've changed the language of the heading to,
To revise the irrigation law to prohibit prohibit residentially well-drawn irrigation. Prohibit all residential well-drawn irrigation. All right, so that changes the heading of that one. So getting back to, this one is restrict irrigation in July and August, which if you're using cistern water, then it doesn't have a negative impact on the
Yes.
aquifer. So,
how are you filling your system? We're back to that issue.
well, if you're filling it from trucked-in sources, then it wouldn't necessarily be negative for the island. If you're filling it with your well water, then you have a problem. So there has to be some regulation on the
Work that
books
out.
about that.
If people have rain gutters that collect it in a cistern, I mean, that's what
Yeah.
you did years ago, that type of thing,
Yeah. And then you save it for when you need it.
right?
I always do that with rain barrels in my gardens.
There was one of those right underneath this room years ago, big brick-in one that connected off the gutters back when it was just a small house.
And you pump it out, is that?
Yeah, it would collect all year long, and then you pump out for the summertime.
If you have it above ground, you can do it with gravity.
Yeah.
The next one is eliminate irrigation wells near public wells. I don't know if we have many irrigation wells near public wells. Over the golf course sources their water, but that's the only one, like.
Right next door to it, Go Hill, it's right next to it.
It's right next to it, yeah.
That was a concern that Suffolk County Water Authority did mention, that they've never had an issue with this, but if they start over pumping at one of their wells,
Yeah.
and it affects, say, a tuck shop or something else around that area, it could be a
The tuck shop's on the system.
Well, there's other residential houses that don't know if they're all hooked in at this point.
I think they.
Tuck shop is,
I think
at this
it goes
point?
at least one house.
I didn't-
is. Yeah, it
It goes
is.
up to what used to be Nancy Richardson's.
Yeah, the ranch house,
Maybe
that's
that's
the
well
studios.
pretty well protected then.
That whole area should be pretty well protected. Why is discouraging trucked-in water essential for sustainable water management for Shelter Island? This makes no sense. Understand that, but part of the idea in reducing trucked-in water is also reducing ferry lines, reducing wear and tear on the roads, that kind of thing too. What happens?
But if we change our language, which we just did, that will eliminate a third of those trucks or maybe more.
Right. What happens in a drought with no roof runoff? Your lawn gets a little brown, or you truck in water. Please identify high-volume water users. Do this and stop lawn irrigation. Provide upland stormwater catchment. Yes, we need more restrictions and management. Promote habitat preservation, but not for deer.
Yes.
Good luck. Big fences.
Adopt tree preservation local law. The question is, who will enforce this? That will be in whatever legislation gets written. Shelter Island needs a natural resources department to protect and identify threats. Work with homeowners and landscapers to limit or even stop fertilizer use. This is what is contaminating our groundwater and feeding algae blooms. So landscapers, fertilizer, so
It has nothing to do with septics floating out into the interface.
70% of the nitrates in our groundwater and in our surface waters are coming from on-site septic systems.
Right.
So then there's another portion of it that comes from fertilizers and surface applications. And then another part is like atmospheric nitrogen that you have no control over.
And wildlife.
And
There is a
wildlife.
contribution,
Absolutely.
yeah.
But the largest portion of it is coming from septic systems. Let's see. The tree preservation law should extend to indiscriminate tree clearing of building lots less than 1 acre. Provide education to homeowners regarding water quality and what options are if wells are contaminated or salted. What are appropriate strategies with no public water available? So that's the educational part that.
And just going back to the one previous, didn't we suggest a lot clearing amount percentage-wise? Was that something we discussed, or did we actually formalize that in a
Yes.
goal? I don't know which.
Adopt a tree preservation local law for the purpose of protecting woodlands and individual historic, significant, and scenic trees important to the community. So it's a tree, the goal is for tree preservation is to strike a balance between development needs and environmental conservation, ensuring the community can evolve while safeguarding its natural resources and maintaining its unique character. Specific provisions would need to be determined based on assessment of community priorities and environmental considerations. However, should include the following topics. Tree identification and protection. The law may specify which species and size of trees are protected. This could include mature trees, rare or endangered species, and trees with cultural or historic significance. Tree removal permit would require property owners to developers to obtain a permit before removing designated trees and trees exceeding a certain size, ensuring that proper assessment and consideration of alternatives are undertaken. Tree replacement. In some cases, the law may require a replanting of trees or replacement of trees. Buffer zones. Tree preservation laws may establish buffer zones around ecologically sensitive areas, water bodies, or habitats where tree removal is restricted to protect the natural environment. The other one is tree care and maintenance. The law may outline guidelines for proper tree care and maintenance, and then penalties and enforcement. So it should include that as well.
This is much more detailed, but in an earlier chapter, we did talk about clearing land in general. Just what percentage of land you could.
Tree topping was mentioned there too.
Tree topping, that's right.
Because it's the large trees that really suck the nitrogen out of the water. They have the roots that go down deep. They're the number one remover of nitrogen, make it into gaseous nitrogen. So the more we cut, the less, I mean, the more nitrogen we have in the water. Brain.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay.
This actually parallels some of the East End legislation regarding what you can do or not do on your property with regard to trees.
Right. So it kind of brings us up to date. All right, so then there's more on eliminating pesticide usage, provide pesticide, herbicide education to homeowners, more control of pesticides and fertilizer applications. We are an island on well water. The EPA states no pesticides or herbicides. I do not see a ban on these things being addressed.
Can we just to quickly state that we're not allowed to? We can't have that.
Right.
The control of pesticides is strictly with the state,
Yeah.
and the county to a certain extent. It cannot be with the town.
The next one is ban nitrate fertilizer on the entire island. Stop saying it can't be done, enforce it. And then allow Suffolk County sub-watersheds wastewater plan and treat sewage individually, avoid big systems, upgrade individual systems. And then the next one is do not give ownership of water to Suffolk County Water Authority. It's the resource of the people, not something they can sell us. So those are the comments that were written on these two boards.
And Goal 7.7 really does address this, and, which was mentioned a few times, the boards, does address getting a tighter grip on fertilizer use on the island. It does, it's a pretty good.
Yeah, it does.
It's pretty strong.
Yes.
There's something they're sneaking into fertilizer now is herbicides and insecticides other things which then destroy the fauna of the soil, which is a natural thing for helping the environment. And people don't like them eating up their lawns,
Yeah.
but they are important for the total ecology of a lawn.
Yeah.
So I don't know, it's kind of a tough thing to
Regulate.
Yeah.
Now, those are the comments for that, but are there any for goal 7.2, 3, and 4?
Yeah, so that's what I want to go back to. So that was just all the comments. We kind of have an overview of what people were saying on the boards. And then there's more detail in some of these other comments that we've received from people.
4 and 5 get a lot of support.
Yes.
It's the others that
Yeah,
are,
4 and 5, and also 7 and 6 and 8.
yeah.
And like those all get a lot of support. Really, the ones that do not are the ones that are, 2.
Towards the
3,
beginning, right.
Towards the beginning.
Right.
So we're going to circle back to those. So, all right.
Well, like, so goal 7.2 does seem pretty heavy-handed. It seems to imply this is just going to happen, and many people wanted way more thought put into it than just having it island-wide waste management district, or again, you have to define what you mean by district here.
Right. Yeah, so the goal 7.2 is sort of different than, let's see, all right, so the goal says, plan for and develop wastewater and water supply infrastructure to safeguard public health, protect the environment, and promote sustainable development. So it's taking, it's assuming that infrastructure will be put in place.
So if
And
you
so-
remove infrastructure out of that, because I think the word infrastructure.
No.
Plan for and develop wastewater and water supply.
Safeguard public.
To safeguard public health, yeah.
You remove that, because that would have to be voted on and discussed at a further date if we needed it, but at the point, we just need
You
to
don't want to
develop.
assume that that's the way you're going
Correct.
necessarily.
I think that,
And that's what's raised a lot of red flags.
yes, so
I
I
like
think that,
that.
just that one word,
Good suggestion.
removal, is, solves
Okay.
a good deal of that.
Because it may come up in the future, but we're not rushing to do it, and maybe people won't want it, period, so.
Well, and also individual systems are infrastructure. It is a,
I know, but that's not what.
I know it's not what people,
No, you're right, you're thinking like a,
people think
yeah, vague.
infrastructure.
I mean, isn't that what's really happened with the grants and the new systems? Haven't we really started to do an infrastructure upgrade individually?
Yes,
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 absolutely.
we have,
just some of the best work you can do.
pretty much.
So again, with the next bold underneath that, consider establishing an island-wide wastewater management district. Again, that needs some education there behind that. This is something that we would establish to, again, protect self-home rule, and then be able to make this decision at a later date or in areas as we need it in certain areas.
So,
So we have to change that so that it isn't,
And I know that district is what you have to legally,
Right.
right, using the word jurisdiction.
that's what I
Right.
was thinking, an
Okay.
island-wide
Softer
wastewater
word.
management jurisdictional district?
Mm.
Or, I guess jurisdiction.
Yeah, and just have that clearly defined somewhere here, because I wouldn't have known what that meant.
right, maybe you just remove the word management and put jurisdictional there.
Yes,
Because management, again, okay, some kind of work, people
Right,
automatically
right.
think some entity,
Is going to come in and tell them what they should do.
Right,
what they put down the toilet.
all right, I like that, okay. So then, reading the text, a potential wastewater management district could have dual roles. First, it would assist in undertaking the extension of sewerage into now unsewered areas such as Bridge Street. The district would help to plan necessary infrastructure, which would direct effluent from multiple properties to manage and treat wastewater in a central facility. The treatment process involves removing pollutants, solids, and harmful substances from the wastewater to make it safe for discharge or reuse for non-potable purposes like irrigation. A wastewater management district would also assist homeowners and businesses in unsewered portions of the island in managing their on-site disposal systems, including installation of IEA systems, in addition to maintenance education of traditional septic systems.
So that makes the distinction between the two groups.
Yes, but if you took all the management words out and put jurisdictional in its place, wouldn't that also serve the same purpose? And it would also clarify the point we're trying to make, that this is not a entity.
Right.
So it's, the word management's used in several places there, maybe just
That's a good, does
Yeah,
everybody?
I think,
does it make sense?
I think it does.
It does.
It's a clarifying edge.
Yeah.
Make sure I got it in all the spots. Okay. The next one is continue investigating methods to treat effluents from municipal buildings in the town center. The town is studying methods to improve wastewater treatment for several municipal buildings in the town center, all of which rely on antiquated septic systems that contribute to high nitrate levels in drinking water. Possibilities could include the following: aggregate IA systems on 2 or more municipal properties, a small treatment plant for the most or all of the buildings located in the center, or the creation of a sewage treatment district to treat more than the municipal buildings. So water quality data should drive these explorations. So that gives the options that you should consider.
Seems reasonable.
Partner with the Shelter Island Heights.
There is data.
Can I have a point here? Because this is directly in conflict with the plan from WAC that says develop wastewater, centralized wastewater plan. Okay, so this is directly in conflict with the other document.
The ground and surface water management plan?
Yeah,
Well, I mean, one of the options on here is to create, either clustered systems for the municipal buildings, which is 2 buildings on a system or 3 buildings on a system, or a small treatment plant for these buildings, or a larger. So it's just saying that we need to look into all the
I
options and
understand
figure
that,
out the
but
best
it's in
option.
direct conflict with this groundwater management that says develop wastewater treatment facility for the center.
Okay, thank
I
you.
don't think it's contradictory. I think it's in keeping.
I wasn't sure that that was all that popular with the public. I thought there was a lot of pushback with respect to that
Right.
project,
So
in which case this opens up some other possibilities that might be.
In 5 years, the whole
Amenable.
world could change on what our options could be.
Yeah,
right.
as
By the
technology
time town
evolves.
decides to spend money, so.
Yeah, right. So true.
Yeah. So the next one is partner with the Shelter Island Heights Property Owners Corporation to upgrade the existing sewer plant in the Heights, provide service to other areas, and explore alternative methods of disposing of the treated effluent. So it says there is one sewage treatment plant on the island which serves the Heights. The effluent from the Heights plant meets its state pollution discharge elimination system permit levels and is being discharged into Shelter Island Sound. The Heights Property Owners Corporation could consider working with the town to upgrade the existing aging system, which would make it eligible for municipal grant funding. There may be other opportunities for the town to partner with the Heights plant to enable expansion of services to other residents and structures. One opportunity may be to connect Bridge Street businesses to the Heights. This would eliminate several current non-conforming septic systems, all of which contribute to surface water contamination of Chase Creek and Deering Harbor. This partnership would be beneficial because it would eliminate the surface water contamination from old septic systems currently leaching into Chase Creek and Deering Harbor. It may allow for the installation of apartments in existing second and third stories, and it would require an upgrade to the Heights wastewater treatment plant that would bring it up to a tertiary level of treatment and possibly include recharge, thus eliminating the need to pump treated wastewater effluent into Peconic Bay, and it would also create eligibility for grants and other funds that are not accessible to the existing Shelter Island Heights Property Owners Corporation.
So there was pushback on the board about this because the Heights, as we have our own system, we don't really want to help the rest of the island. And so partnering with them, what about just explore
Say
partnering?
the same thing, get rid of partner, say explore.
In other words, we're not automatically going to do it. Explore, because all the other language here is suggesting maybe this will be necessary, maybe it won't, maybe they won't want to do it, which, I mean, that's their prerogative.
And geographically, just thinking about trying to pump stuff around, the Heights is not the greatest spot to try and hook other things to. It's going to be very difficult. These pumping stations, where they put those, it's just not going to happen, I don't think.
I don't think it would be a large expansion. I think it would really just target Bridge Street.
Anyway, change the word partner to explore, just a suggestion.
Yes.
Because that's what all the text basically
Yes.
is telling us, that they're going to look into that
Just saying these could be future options.
if necessary.
Right, but the only reason the Heights would look into this is that funding's probably extreme. And they would look to upgrade the plant with some minor expansion. That's the only reason I would think.
Yeah,
Their benefit.
that would be to their benefit.
Right.
If they're willing to trade off with this idea of the town somehow getting involved.
Some funding might come linked with, if you're expanding, then you can get X to upgrade your system. So,
Right, that-
you know, that's what happens.
the only way
all
it
the
would
time.
work, is the town can bring you how many millions of dollars of grant funding. Is really what the whole
Foundation.
would be.
Yeah.
But they're already a district themselves, so
Yeah.
they've identified their eligibility, if you will, for that type of thing, so. The
Right.
town doesn't have to be involved with that, right? They can do it completely.
But you said they couldn't go for a grant, though.
Grants,
They can do it,
grants are
they
not
can
usually,
upgrade on
they're
their
not
own, but they
eligible
don't
because they're
qualify
private.
for grant funding, because they're a private entity.
Yeah.
They're not municipal. So then, 7.3. Plan for and develop water supply to ensure residents have ready access to drinking water that meets all applicable local, state, and federal standards. Create a phased master plan for public water utility service on Shelter Island. So that's the first goal. So as saltwater intrusion and rising nitrate levels become more of a significant and consistent problem, more residents are reaching out to the town and requesting a solution and to be provided with potable water. With this in mind, developing a master plan for public water utility service involves a comprehensive and systematic approach to ensure that all aspects of water supply are considered and integrated into the long-term strategy. The process would include an assessment of the current water supply, community engagement, water demand projections, risk assessment, financial planning, and phasing. It would also catalog potential lands for acquisition that satisfies the municipal sanitary radius and other water quality and yield requirements for municipal wells. The plan should establish manageable phases based on priority, funding availability, and urgency. In the short term, the plan would focus on areas that are currently or anticipated to be challenged, meaning that they are unable to reliably source potable water from residential wells. The process should begin with discussions with public water suppliers to understand the engineering and financial aspects of this undertaking. It should also include a study of the aquifer quality, nitrates, chlorides, PFOS, PFAS, in the areas requesting water service to identify and prioritize the need for remediation of contaminants and to determine where water districts should be prioritized island-wide. The plan would also develop a financial model and identify funding sources for drinking water supply improvements. This could include the establishment of a water quality district or an island-wide water management district. In the long term, the plan should consider could consider integrating the Heights, Bridge Street Water Company, West Neck Water, and Deering Harbor water systems as appropriate. So this is really just outlining how you would look at the island's water supply and water resources comprehensively and sort of triage what we have going on with nearshore saltwater intrusion, with what we're seeing in as far as nitrate levels go, and kind of coming up with a town-wide plan that the public agrees to.
Is this consistent with the current water plan?
Yeah.
I mean, it really should be either mentioning that or making sure that it parallels that.
Yeah, the ground and surface water management plan makes recommendations that hit on different aspects of this, but this really wraps it all up in one picture of how to move forward.
To ground and surface recommendations, 0 to 5 years, then 6 to 10. I mean, they break it down into, when you would do what. So begin discussions with public water suppliers to understand the engineering and financial. That exact language is in the recommendation. So it really does reflect the 2020 ground and surface, surface water.
We don't say anything about this water district again there. Maybe it's something that we've already discussed it, I know this evening, but.
It has here in the last paragraph that it could include the establishment of a water quality district or an island-wide water management district. So.
But didn't we already say we think that is the direction we should go previously?
Right.
So
I think this is
maybe-
not talking jurisdictional, though.
Okay.
But again, if we're fuzzy on it, it's not clear enough.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It needs to be clarified.
Well, so yes, is it a management district or is it a jurisdictional district?
Yeah.
Or is that a third entity?
Both.
They're both in there.
Both.
This could include the establishment of a water quality district or an island-wide water management district, which is what we were been referring to, but in the long term, the master plan would integrate, with the existing systems as appropriate.
But isn't quality a given? I mean, who's going to want to pump terrible water somewhere?
So a part of what a water
Yeah.
quality district does is also provides protections for water quality. So restricting fertilizer use, restricting the kind of like business that could function there, things like that. Just like you have a wellhead protection zone. So if you have a municipal well, then you don't want sanitary systems within 300 feet of that. It's that same kind of concept. So it sort of reiterates what's in the goal above. Is the reiteration confusing? Is it make it?
We didn't have a lot of dots about this one, like, did we? I don't remember seeing that was a,
7.3.
It's this one.
yeah, I mean, it's a mixed bag there.
It's, yeah.
As far as the responses on our sheets,
Mhm.
we really didn't have any comments.
No. Well, and I think part of the issue is that the description that we have in the document itself is much longer than the description that was on the board. The board is sort of a summary of.
Right, and this clarifies it.
I think it clarifies it better here.
But again, it could be a pushback against this management district concept.
Right.
So we already said we're going to remove the word at management, right? Or is
Yeah.
that not here?
No, see, that was my question, because here it's Island-wide Water Management District. Specifically, you want to keep that there, but change jurisdictional in the earlier versions. Or is that the same, water quality district, is that the same thing
That's what I'm
as?
saying, though.
Yeah, a water quality district is like a protection.
Right, okay, so that's one thing.
So then maybe this is talking about, but I don't think it would be island-wide water infrastructure. I think it would be,
Right. We could take it right from the 0 to 5, in terms of tightening up the language. Consider establishing water quality districts or an island-wide water management district. That's good. I think we all agree. And install public water supply and distribution systems to supply currently challenged areas and establish associated management and operating capabilities. So I think that's sort of both. Like, yes, we need an island-wide district to have jurisdictional control. And we are already talking to homeowners associations,
Right.
that want us to help them determine if it's necessary or feasible for them to get water and to help them chat with Suffolk County Water Authority. So I think that those two sentences say that. And that's right from the plan. So maybe if we can just plug those in instead of that confusing paragraph, I think that's clearer.
Well, and if you can even, is the plan mentioned in this?
No, it should be.
It should be mentioned.
And we could say
Yeah,
from the
see
2020.
so-and-so, or from, so, because that'll be an appendix, I'm
well, the plan is goal 1. 7.1 is the ground service.
yeah.
So we can just refer back to.
But it's always worth saying that, so that people see this is coordinated with a plan, they don't think it's a new idea.
Yes.
I'm just a little concerned, though, when something I don't think we can do anything about, is that we say we want to plan this, we're talking about a 5-year plan, 10-year plan, whatever it may be, but we already have the crises here now. We have areas that are already, and so I guess it was typical finger in the dike type thing. We will get Montclair online, we'll get West Neck online. We still don't have our plan done, if you will. We're still in the process thereof. So now we're having to work around these things that are all kind of getting established. I don't know how you fix that, because
I
the
don't
crisis is happening faster than we can actually make the plans, or you have to form a committee for this. I mean, we sort of already have them in place, but,
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
It's something that you would do a committee for. You would do
Yeah.
a subcommittee, and it would be members of the WAC, like the Water Advisory Committee, the Water Quality Improvement Advisory Board, the town engineer,
Yeah.
member of the board. Like you'd have all the
Right.
together
And the
to develop this plan.
And the reason the long-term plan, this was mentioned again at one of our previous meetings recently, which is there might be, people can envision a competition for the wells. a competition among neighborhoods for, you know, where are you going to go for the water? You're going to have to leave your neighborhood, I'm talking Silver Beach and Menantic Peninsula. So all the more reason to be thinking longer term as to how this resource and distribution, problematic distribution, is going to get allocated and planned for.
Because you need to kind of establish a criteria, ranking,
Right.
you know.
Not just who got there first.
And even, that's even more important, why we should form this jurisdictional district, because once we have that established, then we could dictate where these wells are, because if someone's saying, we want this, and they're gonna put, well, the Smith property is gonna provide the water for Menantic, well, wait a minute, that's really not the best interest for the plan that we really have in mind, but that's already,
Yeah, it needs more comprehensive
Yeah.
planning on this specific thing.
There shouldn't be some restrictions on, once this is developed, on the buildings that are there, so it doesn't expand to exceed
Right,
Capacity.
right.
the
Yes,
capacity.
right.
So if it's a 1 acre lot, it's got one house on it, it needs to, for planning
that's where your
purposes, it needs to
zoning
stay
has
at
to lock it
that
down.
level.
Yeah,
Right.
good point. Yeah.
And so all that, I think, would have to be established while you're working on this.
But expanding the West Neck district is correlated with whether the wells could support an expansion. In
Right,
terms of, so when people ask to be added on, you've got to kind of calculate whether
right.
wells can produce enough for everybody.
No, they can't.
And
Or
that's,
you have to do another well.
right, and that's all part of it. It's, you know, is it even feasible? I mean, there's going to be a limit to how many people can be on public water on Jones Island. It's not realistic to think that every house will be on public water. There's still going to be a large portion that's always going to be on private wells, just because of the way we are set up and just the way we're shaped and our, you know, geography.
The thing that this doesn't touch though is the recharge section. So we're talking about wells needing to be supplied out of the golf course. And we have a tremendous amount of runoff that goes right off into Chase Creek,
Right.
Yeah.
right? I mean, you have, you know, it feels like it's probably 3 to 1 that runs off that actually probably gets down.
Yeah, yeah.
Part of this plan in this section should be to recharge the public water sections, if you're gonna be pulling from these places.
Right, right. I mean, that's already on the books. You're supposed to control your runoff, right?
Yeah, your runoff's not supposed to leave your property.
Yeah.
Everything's supposed to be recharged on.
Except, I guess, government.
Captured, you know, swaled in some fashion to keep it on your property so it doesn't wash out your neighbors or wash into the bay. So there are some areas where it's harder to do that than others. Like in high-low, there are some areas where it's almost impossible to keep the water on your property because of the hills. And we had a huge washout issue in high-low with a construction project because once they took the vegetation off, and, but it's on the books that you have to maintain your runoff on your property. So that's something that, you know, actually does get enforced to a degree. And what they also do is put in additional dry wells and like capture on the roads if it's a runoff problem on the roads, trying to capture it as much as possible.
But it might be worth mentioning the runoff concept somewhere in here, just to acknowledge that it's an issue.
Recharge.
Yeah.
Water capture.
Yeah.
So I'll add that in.
I was got a clarifying question, just because you're using a term I haven't heard before, just to make sure I understand what you're saying. You're using the term jurisdictional district as opposed to wastewater management district or whatever. Could you guys just define what jurisdictional district means? Is it like, can you point to like a legal source of that or something that would just make a layman like me understand what that exactly means?
It's your territory. It gives you authority over that area. So, for example, right now, in most of the island, we do not have a water district. You know, like the Heights has a water district, Deering Harbor has a water district, West Neck has a water district. We don't have one. So there's nobody, the town of Shelter Island does not have jurisdictional authority. We don't have control over most of the island when it comes to where a water supply system will go.
I understand, I'm asking about the question, the word jurisdictional. What is that? What do you see that meaning in this context as opposed to just saying district? What does jurisdictional district mean?
It gives you authority to regulate what happens in that area. So people keep getting confused when we say just water district, because in their mind, that means infrastructure, the construction of infrastructure. We're not saying that you can have a district without having infrastructure. You can have a district that just gives you control over an area without putting infrastructure in that space.
So you're saying that a jurisdictional district would be the town controlling the water on the island? Yeah.
This is your own definition, or is this a legitimate definition that we can look up?
Jurisdictional in the dictionary says related to the official power to make legal decisions.
Thank you.
But which New York town law allows this?
That's New York town law, right? Is it related to law? If people speak,
know
they
what
need to
the
go to the
jurisdiction
podium
means.
because people can't hear them online.
Thank you, Coco.
Good point.
Whenever you create a district, you're creating.
Which New York town law you refer to?
I don't remember off the top of my head, but I'll find it for you and give it to you later. All right, so on to the next. Want to add?
Let's go to, if we could, goal 7.7, because it speaks to what Jay brought up. Again, we're jumping around a little bit, but that's how the conversation's flowing. Protect surface water surrounding Shelter Island from being harmed by human activity and stormwater runoff. Now, Jay's point was, let's also try to recapture, the other rationale here for runoff, for preventing runoff.
So it's in the provide upland stormwater catchment, detention, and recharge infrastructure to better control stormwater runoff and reduce contamination of ground and
Yes, there
surface
it
waters.
is. Yes, there it is.
There should be a focus on municipal wells or
Right,
on,
in the area around municipal wells.
right.
Okay.
So let's see if we can add that in here. Stormwater catchment with roadside rain gardens is a sustainable stormwater management practice that involves the use of rain gardens and bioswales along roadsides to capture and treat stormwater runoff. These features are designed to mimic natural processes, allowing rainwater to infiltrate the soil, to be taken up by plants, and undergo biological and physical filtration. This approach helps reduce the volume of pollutant load, stormwater runoff. And then the town can also encourage coastal residents to create vegetative buffer zones on their property to lessen runoff into the bays. Could include educational outreach, technical assistance, creating buffer zones, and minimizing, with minimum planting requirements. So somehow, let's see, maybe after the first paragraph, we can add that the town should have an increased focus on maximizing recharge in the area of municipal. There it goes. So if I were to say, in addition to residential stormwater management practices, the town should focus its efforts on maximizing recharge in areas surrounding municipal waters.
Public water sources.
Services.
Yeah.
I'll say such as Goat Hill. That's an area that could really use some,
I think any
yeah.
Yeah,
ties in.
spot that could probably benefit,
yeah.
definitely the heights.
It ties in the recommendation we made before that we use 2% funds to purchase natural recharge areas that are existing as
Yeah, the
opposed
kettle
to
holes
the
and-
kettle holes,
yeah.
like that. So I know that's in the earlier chapter.
Was that in an earlier?
They don't seem to appeal much though to the
No,
2% people.
no, they don't. Look at those. You know, I think we need to be a little more forceful there because they're getting developed, they're getting filled and developed, unfortunately.
Yeah, another thing that the 2% money can be used for is purchasing actually like developed properties that are struggling with consistent flooding or saltwater intrusion. So like properties that no longer have potable water or get flooded frequently and have not a hardened shoreline, but maybe a natural shoreline that, you know, if the homeowner wants to sell their property, CPF could actually purchase it, restore it to a natural state, and then allow Mother Nature to, you know,
Come and go.
do its thing. So it allows for wetlands to move more inland as.
Be a large portion of the shoreline.
So I mean, that's
Coming.
something that CPF monies can be used for, but our CPF team has sort of kind of made a policy that they won't purchase developed properties, but it is in the towns.
But developed properties want a fortune for it.
Right, and it protects those properties from development, protects the shoreline from
Right.
development.
That would be
Yeah,
amazing.
I think as we develop, there's going to be fewer and fewer properties without construction on it. So CPF will, I think,
Terrifying.
over time, you know, now until 2050, be forced to buy properties that have houses and structures, you know, and that will,
Because they want to be alternative.
They did a lot of that in like West Hampton, where there was
Yeah.
homes built out in like the mud
All the
flats.
dunes out
And then-
in
yeah.
red.
And so.
I have zero sympathy for those people.
I know, they use a lot of CPF money to buy those, take them down and restore it to wetlands, which has a much better benefit than allowing someone to build on stilts. All right,
So we still need to finish off reading to public comments,
right.
chapter 7.
But we haven't even gotten to the natural resources section yet. We've really been focusing on water.
Yeah, we've kind of done,
But we looked at trees, 7, 9. But I mean, I think there's,
so, I mean, really what we've gotten through is sort of the comments on the boards, but we haven't gotten through the spreadsheet or the comments that we've received from the public in some of the other, like the emails and things like that.
yes, which we have to go through.
We still have a lot to go through on this.
And I suspect, given the popularity of water as an issue, there's probably a lot of them.
Yes, yes, there is quite a few. I think some of them they're gonna overlap with each other, similar concerns. But, you know, we have quite a few to still go through. So we're obviously not gonna get through them all tonight.
I know you resorted all of those for us, didn't you?
I organized them by chapter.
By chapter, right?
Yeah,
Remember the name of that document?
I'll resend it to you. I can't remember.
Yeah, I'm having a hard time finding, it's just me, I guess, documents in this,
SharePoint.
There's way too many of them.
Yeah, the SharePoint gets confusing, I'm sorry. So I'll email it back out with the sorted, so it's easier to read.
sorry
That'd
to,
be appreciated.
Yeah, no worries, I don't mind. So it's almost 8 o'clock. Why don't we go through Sean's comments, since he's, you know. on the
Sure.
committee, and
They're
then-
good.
And his are pretty straightforward. He has that on page 92. Let's see.
What page?
92 of the plan, the draft plan,
92?
of the draft plan.
May I just ask, I noticed, is Sean still a member of the committee?
Yes.
He's been gone for the last 4 consecutive meetings. Are these comments he's currently sending in?
No, they were sent in.
I mean,
No, they were sent in. They were all
is he
sent in.
still a member of?
Yes, he's still a member.
He's still a member, he just is on night duty this week.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So he wrote a comment for page 92 on, let's see. Oh, where it talks about the school and the wastewater treatment plant. Okay. Paragraph 2, under existing and potential sewer districts. He says, it currently says, however, as of 2023,
So, yeah, this is about the,
out of the project and installed IA systems, putting plans for the wastewater treatment plant for the remaining municipal buildings on hold. His recommendation is to replace the language with, the school had pulled out of the project and installed IA systems, causing the town to reevaluate the best course of action for municipal buildings, for the remaining municipal buildings. I think that's a good suggestion.
Yeah, let's just go ahead and do that.
So wait, so what is he changing?
We're fixing it up
So
because
the last sentence of,
Yeah, the last sentence
Yeah.
is true, right?
Yeah, but rather than say it that way, say however.
instead of just saying that the town put the project on hold, it didn't just put it on hold. They're reevaluating what needs to be done.
The best
So-
course.
Yeah, reevaluating the best course of action. So
Well, I guess they couldn't get away from separation from the system and well.
Well, no, we still can't. You know, our wells and our septic system are less than 75 feet apart in some spots.
Right.
So instead of on hold, reevaluating.
Right,
Yeah.
reevaluating
Okay, got it.
options.
Or what's the purpose of this? Are we trying to just state history? We're just trying to state the facts where we are now?
Yeah, it's like,
Because, the school, that's the past now. It's
done.
That's
it's
what
not
it
about the
says.
future moving on, so,
Yeah, that's
I
what it
guess you
says.
could recognize a successful project.
yes.
Right.
Maybe that'd be another way of saying it.
I've asked for the results of their effluent testing, but I don't think they have them yet.
No, they won't have them yet. It'll take a little while
Yeah.
to get up and running.
See if they're really hitting the mark.
There's a whole startup phase where
Yeah.
the tank doesn't perform until it develops a nice, healthy growth of bacteria.
Yeah.
Can you jumpstart it?
Yeah, and they did, but it takes a little while to level out, yeah.
Given that,
month or two.
given that much volume?
It's a high concentrate volume, so it's going to take a while to get it balanced. I don't know I haven't seen the results. I have no idea how it's testing,
Interesting.
but,
would it be helpful to have the town hold an information session on IA systems and how to apply for grants, or what they are, what they do, why they're better than septic systems, and invite residents?
This was brought up at the WQI to do exactly this, and actually to have a workshop, where people who are interested come, and here's your application, sit down, and the WQI committee members would actually just float the room and help you just fill out the forms and and outline your next steps. That's all written out in a procedure for people, but it's sometimes easier to hear it or to have questions answered as they come up. So let me just send off an email to see,
Why not do like a YouTube?
Plan for the new year.
Video,
yeah,
so somebody could just hit the link and follow along.
that too. We should do both, yeah.
reclaimourwater.com.
reclaimourwater.info has videos on it, has everything you need.
Oh, it's a website.
Yeah, reclaimourwater.info.
Yeah, okay.
Before I got in this position, I used to do monthly workshops at the library, teaching people about the program, helping them sign up for grants, giving them information on what the systems do, how they work, the whole reason why we,
There hasn't been one in a while, though, right?
no, because I haven't been doing them because people think it's a conflict of interest.
Oh,
I need to be in the,
It'd be good for,
Yeah.
it would be helpful for many homeowners that don't really want to watch YouTube, but, and some would rather watch your YouTube, I don't doubt that, but go in there and have a real
I think
person.
it would be good for the WAC to do. The Water Advisory
Yeah.
Committee could definitely take that up and do an educational piece on it.
Okay, great. Because one of the themes in here is education as well,
Right.
so if, you come from the city, water just magically shows up in your pipes.
Exactly, and it's of lovely quality, so
Yeah.
it's a different mindset when you have to pay attention to your water. And I think that's what we're sort of trying to do by doing the water testing, is to raise people's awareness that,
Yeah, but they need to think about that, yeah, because I would never have thought about that.
yeah, most people don't, and especially people who don't live out here year-round, they don't understand that you have on-site septic and on-site well, 100 feet away from each other, and your neighbor. So, want to make sure that everybody in your neighborhood's kind of moving in the same direction.
I hope it's that
You hope
far
it's that
apart.
far. Yeah, I hope it's farther, actually. You want 150 minimum. That's the standard. So Sean's next recommendation was, page 96, I'm gonna say it.
Page 96?
Uh-huh. Develop an incentive program for residents to test their well water and share the data with the town for the purpose of establishing groundwater quality mapping. He says, get rid of the should and start with develop a program. So instead of the town should develop a program,
Just
just
Develop.
develop a program.
I think that's
That's easy fix.
That's an easy one, we can do that.
yeah, that just seems like you can absolutely do that without.
Develop a program to get people to test their water and to improve education.
It's doable.
And then the next one is on page 97, where it says implement source water protection programs that identify vulnerable areas around wells and other groundwater sources. It says either specifically recommend the creation or consideration of water protection zones or don't. If no specific recommendation is made, focus on clearly identifying what the water protection program is to accomplish and why it's important. So it's another one where I think the language is too fuzzy. So it reads, this could include the designation of water protection zones where estimated effluent travel to surface water is less than 2 years based on 1 foot a day movement, and areas that are currently experiencing groundwater at or above 7 milligrams per liter of nitrate. The water zones would include standards to minimize contamination risks in these areas, including land use restriction buffer zones and pollutant reduction measures. More information can be found in the watershed management plan. So,
So just get rid of the kind of coulds or maybes or,
yes.
Related to that, what is the wellhead protection zoning on the top of page 96, since you're explicating?
So a wellhead protection zone is specifically around public drinking wells. And it's an area that you want to eliminate, like you want sanitary systems to be at least 200 feet away. You don't want pesticides and fertilizers to be spread in that area. It's a similar thing, only it's more specific, centered around public wells.
Isn't it basic to Suffolk County law, and why do we have to establish it here? That's
Because sometimes things are grandfathered and they don't meet the standards. So if you know that, then there are things, and you have it in your code, you can do things to help mediate it. Yes, I'll say should.
I think the other thing that happens too is that people don't know all the Suffolk County rules and regulations. Sometimes you have to give them some information on these type of things.
Right?
absolutely.
And some background on why you might be making changes. This next one was 103, manage white-tailed deer. The Deer and Tick Committee has pursued a three-pronged strategy to control tick-borne disease, and it's not working. We have more ticks, more disease, more sick people on Pelter Island than ever. Shooting deer and telling people to not get bit is not the answer. We must explore alternate strategies. So, let's see, and then it says the widespread use of permethrin is not the answer either. It's highly toxic to the environment and can remain in water for more than a year in cases. And then where it says work with organizations and property owners to help assess and control ticks and prevent tick-borne disease, we need to replace should with shall in the second paragraph, so it's stronger language. The town shall continue to work with the Deer and Tick Committee to implement and identify strategies. And then we have to do more. We need to collaborate with the new Tick Center in Hampton Bays and involve universities, researchers, and other organizations to assist with monitoring and intervention. That's a good suggestion.
That's treatment, that's really not getting rid of them,
Correct.
it's telling you how many there are.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be close to impossible to eliminate ticks. I think education is really our best bet since we're not allowed to do the 4 posters, which did have a good impact on knocking down the tick population to a degree.
Is this the first full year without them?
No.
Second with 2
It's been-
years?
Third, maybe
It's
third.
been 3 years
I think
at
it's
least,
third.
yeah.
Are they recommending a pause and then a restart or their elimination?
They eliminated it, the DEC. They made it so that you have to get permission from every homeowner within a 500-foot radius.
It might be bigger, but yeah,
Or, yeah,
radius.
of where the four-poster is sited in order to be able to move forward.
And what does it give them? It gives them,
Permethrin, but it's direct application to.
oh, they rub up against
So
it.
instead of like spraying it all over the lawn and
The
having,
mice are the ones that are bringing it all in.
yeah, it's well, like
It's a part of the
the
life
deer,
cycle.
it's part of the life cycle. The deer is like their apex feeding, so they'll start on the little things, but eventually they end up on the deer. And so the deer are toxic and they eat the deer, then they die. And that's kind of the kill the adults and they can't breed, right? That's kind of the goal.
Hard to kill.
When they studied,
6,000 ticks a
Really
year.
hard, it's really hard.
didn't they, when they studied the deer meat itself, they found there was heightened levels of permethrin in the neck meat, not elsewhere. But
Correct.
so that was an issue for hunters as far as,
Right.
Correct.
they wouldn't use that part of the deer.
Right,
Well, there's a lot of babies out there right now.
I know, they're everywhere.
Not a good
So
sign.
yeah, there's side effects to all of it. Whenever you add a chemical to the environment, you're gonna have some kind of consequence.
Yeah. We have less hunters.
But that is, yeah, we have less hunters, which is,
Yeah.
So who's,
that's a damper on our program.
collaborate with the New Tick Center. So here, right under goal 7-10, collaborate with other researchers. We could put such as the New
Right.
Tick Center in Hampton Bays.
Yeah, because we have collaborate with other researchers who are studying disease patterns, effectiveness of intervention, and emerging tick-borne disease strains.
Stony Brook has one too, I think.
Yeah.
They're-
So I think we can probably, I think that covers because it would include all of these. So those were all of Sean's recommendations for this.
It's after we.
Yeah, so, all
Right.
right, so next time we'll start on the chart. I'll email you the chart organized, like sorted, so it's easier to.
That'd be good. Thank you.
And then we'll go through the other comments that we've received about chapter.
Still in chapter 7.
Still in chapter 7.
Okay.
And it'll still be kind of jumping back and forth as we hit the comments as they come to us. Yeah. So December 5th, we'll continue the conversation. So I make a motion to adjourn?
About public
We
comment.
have.
Oh, right. Thank you. Space. Anyone from the public would like to make a comment?
Please come to the podium and identify.
Stella? I'm sorry, Stella had to. I've noticed Stella before, I'm sorry.
Just three quick things on things that you've covered already. Number one, with respect to the well-drawn irrigation, and I think I heard you say that, it would not be okay for residential, but perhaps commercial. Because there are things, like Sylvester Manor and the golf courses. I think there might be like a third flavor of ice cream that you might want to consider, which is commercial that are not golf courses, like some of the inns. So for example, Ram's Head, the Cheequit, I mean, do they or don't they have the ability to draw from wells to do their irrigation? Cheequit's not a good example because they're in this.
Yeah, I was gonna say, they don't, but.
Yeah. So the Pridwin, for example.
Mhm.
So
That's
not
really-
to be answered now, I'm just asking if there's a third flavor of ice cream to consider.
Yes, yep.
And then the next question, the next thing is just a comment. We're talking about the trucked in water and that, we wouldn't disallow it for pools and cisterns. I just think we might need to have a plan B because at some point in time, I mean, I live on the North Fork. I'm a Suffolk County Water Authority customer. And right now where these trucks are filling up, they have permits and they pay Suffolk County Water to take the water and fill up and come to the island. At some point in time, if the North or the South Forks get fed up with that, they might not allow it.
Yeah.
So,
True.
That's already the case.
Is it-
yeah. So we
I
should
know they
probably
fill up in September too.
an ultimate plan B for when that happens.
I agree, Stella.
Thanks. And then the third thing is just a comment about the Bridge Street and the Heights. I see earlier, it's like somebody said, if the Heights doesn't want to help the rest of the island, that's not the case. The only thing that we've been advocating for is doing it the right way and doing a study. to make sure that our existing folks are not penalized in any way, to make sure that there's ample capacity for where lots haven't been built out, to make sure that the price point that would be charged is not so egregious that nobody would be able to afford to do it. And to recognize that, we're so close to the water that we might not be able to do much of anything other than maintain what we have. So it's not, we don't want to help, we just want facts and figures. And I just wanted to get that off my chest.
That's much better than what the actual comment said, but that makes more sense. Yeah.
Well, and the comment was one that we read off the board, so it's not.
Doesn't reflect your view.
Not a reflection of how we feel
All of
about
it.
it.
But
Yeah, I know. I get it. It's just, it's a sensitive topic.
Yes.
And there are people on all sides of this argument, and we're open to learning and seeing how this could work. Anyway, that's it for me for tonight. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Stella. Lori, you had a comment?
Hi, Lori Beard Raymond. A couple things based on some of the discussions you had tonight. You were struggling with some of the terminology for water and wastewater districts. I've had quite a bit of training in establishing new districts. And I think what you're trying to say, and maybe I can help you with some of that language, is when you're creating a water or sewer district, you're basically creating a footprint or a boundary, let's call it, that district, which is what the word district means. And the authority having jurisdiction, which I think is what you're trying to achieve, would be the town.
Right.
So, and you'll find some of that language that's already in the West Neck Water District paperwork in terms of how to word that.
Thank you.
The next thing I want to talk about is the other comment that was made earlier about West Neck Water. There are at least 4 or 5 wells, irrigation wells within very close proximity of the wells 5 and 6 of the West Neck Water District. And there's a loophole in the town code, and that has to do with the definition of irrigation and what the town and the county consider an irrigation system and the irrigation well. 2 different things. So in that, I bring that up as a point because right now that loophole is not it's not enforceable by Suffolk County Health Department. They don't look at it, and neither does the town. And so irrigation wells or irrigation wells are being installed for use that are below the threshold of the town irrigation code, which are drawing from the aquifer that are affecting the West Neck Water public well. So when you're looking at a public well recharge area, you should also be looking at irrigation wells in that loophole, because all you're doing is taking the water from the public wells and using them for irrigation where that loophole exists. And right now, you've got at least 4, maybe 5 of them within very close proximity of wells 5 and 6, which we're now being told have to be replaced because they are insufficient. So part of that is your problem that's causing additional.
I think the irrigation well was there before the West Neck Water wells.
No, actually, the town put a new one in. If you're
No, there was, but the original well that was there was
was one.
underground in a pit right where the building is. And that was before any West Neck
That's
Water.
right. And it wasn't functioning correctly, so the town went in and put a new one in. It's just a complete result.
Right.
That's one of them. But there's also 3 or 4 others on very close proximity in addition to the one that's on the golf course.
Well, and that's something that where a wellhead protection zone would come in handy.
Yeah, so there's just a loophole there that I think needs to get closed somehow, because it's not just about recharge area around public water wells. The other thing that I want to talk about is, you talk about saltwater intrusion, but I think people need to understand that there's lots of different reasons for saltwater intrusion in your wells. And one of the things that's also a loophole that needs to get closed is dewatering for construction. It's, the town code allows that for, or disallows it, I should say, for swimming pools.
Right.
But for foundations and other structures, especially when, in areas where you have, and most particular in areas that you have very shallow groundwater. So, you know, there's different areas.
But they had to stay 2 feet above groundwater for construction, no matter what it was.
Yes, no, only for swimming pools. The town code does not say that for, but the building department has been asking for that because that's a DC thing for New York State. But there's, it's not being done correctly.
Yeah, you're allowed to dewater for certain things, like if you need to put deep pilings in or things like that. There are certain things you're allowed to dewater for, but swimming pools is not one of the things you're allowed to dewater for.
Household foundations.
Yeah.
Yes, you are allowed to do that.
I mean, I don't think it's smart to put your foundation in water, or have the floor of your basement in water, but, you know, some people,
The Haman's house, that's what they did there.
No, I know they did.
yeah.
Well, and if you also look at the plans that come into the building department, you know, you've got people trying to show that 2 feet distance, Jay, but they're not showing the discharge and the piping to it and all the other things. So by the time you get done and that, as you know, where the shallow groundwater is, it changes constantly. So, you know, when they're doing a test hole, it may not be accurate in terms of where that is. It only has accurate on the day they did the test hole. So, you know, I'm not convinced that 2 feet is actually enough. So anyway, I'm just saying that there's many reasons for that saltwater intrusion, and I think that area needs to get looked at a little bit more because I think you can need to put some more protection.
And I think that would just be in very few, very specific cases where that would cause saltwater intrusion.
Yeah.
I mean, there have been some instances of it happening when someone was dewatering for a pool and for an extended period. But I mean, it's not going to be super common that someone is going to dewater for construction and salt their neighbor's well. I don't think there's a significant amount of
It's not just-
dewatering happening on
It's
the
not
island.
just that, Meg. The point I'm trying to make is that if a property owner doesn't understand some of these things and they are trying to, I want my swimming pool, I want my this, I want my that. You know, at what point, you know, well, I've contaminated my well, I've contaminated my neighbor's well, you know, because I have to have my pool or I have to have my 9-foot basement ceiling or whatever it is that they're doing, right? You know, at what point does the town take responsibility for something that the property owner themselves should have some liability for? You know, or their engineer or their design professional that's proposing those things.
Your suggestion, if we just change our code to limit the footage, you know, when you said 2 feet, go to 3 or 4 feet, something like that, or
I think some of that's the case, John, but I also think that it's about education in terms of making sure that people understand these things and the terms, and understand how these affect different things.
It seems like the legislation would probably be a better way to go than just education.
Well, it's both, I think it's.
Absolutely.
It's no different than maintaining your septic.
But there are
system.
people that would say, what, like you just said, I want my pool, I want my pool house, I want my 9-foot, and they're like, well, so what if your well gets, I mean, it's a well anyway,
Yeah, I don't
right?
I don't care about my neighbor, you know what I mean? It's like, okay, but the town has to take, I think, some sort of
Position on that.
position on that is what I'm trying to say. Maybe that's a better way of saying
if
it.
you go to the punitive side of it, so if you do hurt your neighbor's water, which the town say, you know,
Well, there's a reason why they would forbid it, or they would.
right, I
Yeah,
mean, that's.
not just random. Yeah.
It's happened several cases on the island where people's wells have been ruined because their neighbor did just, you're talking about dewatering, so.
Or if their irrigation system broke and it was well-drawn irrigation and it, you know, salted their neighbor's well and their well, and that's happened in a few places on
Right,
it.
and the poor neighbors stuck.
I've seen cases with that with the irrigation systems too. And the override in the irrigation systems on the timers, where they're just constantly running. So it's about using water to the point where they're constantly using the water and the homeowner's not there to know that those things.
Yeah, it
happen.
boils down to education on responsible water usage.
Yeah, so I think it's a combination of all of the above, actually.
Okay.
Anyway, just a few of my comments based on your discussions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Comments? Jan?
Yeah, so, I just want to talk again about the comments which I made earlier today, which is basically that section 7 of the plan refers extensively to ground and surface water management plan.
Which subsection are you in?
Is it
Chapter
chapter
seven.
7?
Chapter 7.
Or across the board.
For example, on page 93, it starts with ground and surface water management plan. And so this is like inherent part of it. This plan is obsolete, has been never subject to any public discussion, was adopted during the COVID without any public discussion. It calls for things like island-wide public water over the next 10 years. It says things like require owners to connect to the public water supply where available. Okay, so this is very contrary to.
Are you talking about
discussion
this document or the other one? Okay, got it.
Yes.
Okay.
And
No, he said the other one.
But the comprehensive plan refers to this extensively, and I think this groundwater, ground and surface and groundwater management plan is inherent part of it, and it cannot be because it proposes things which are very controversial, like island-wide public water over the next 10 years. I don't think the need for this was established. As a matter of fact, the recent results in the center, it turned out to be not as bad as people were talking about. I mean, out of 153 wells, 4% failed nitrogen test, okay, and 11% failed, or 7% failed the bacteria test, and not by that much, okay?
Right, but over
This is supposed to be.
and
I'm
are
sorry?
50% of those wells, though, are at an actionable level. So they're more than half of the EPA required. So they're 5 milligrams.
Okay, so this is very arbitrary because the standard is 10 milligrams per liter, okay? And only 6 wells out of 153 failed that, okay? So actionable level, whose definition is this?
The health department. So the health department considers half of the standard to be a level that requires action. So, for example, if you had a business and your well was drawing 5 milligrams per liter, the health department would put you on a strict schedule of increased testing and monitoring to make sure that those levels don't continue to increase, because the more they increase,
Yeah.
the more negative the results.
That's fine. Still, I mean, the bigger point I'm making, this is supposed to be the most affected area in a center, and the results are nothing like, this is like a crisis that cannot be addressed with like installing KI systems and reverse osmosis under the sink filters, okay? So, but this plan is calling for island-wide public water over the next 10 years, okay? So the references to this plan should be removed, and the plan itself should be completely redone. But the recommendations, goals 7.1, 7.2, 7.3, they're all consistent with the plan, which is obsolete and completely not adequate to the situation. And we just started the testing, okay? Probably the other parts of the island don't have anywhere near those problems. There are challenge areas like Silver Beach, which has salted wells and so forth, but that's a completely different problem, okay? So this plan is calling for public water island-wide, which will be tens of millions of dollars, when the need has not been established. We just started the testing, right? Just in the center. So that's completely unwarranted, and therefore I have big problems with recommendation 7.1, 7.2, 7.3. And I would like to state this, but the other comment I wanted to make, that this is clearly controversial subjects, public water and sewer around the island, but you seem to be gliding over this. Even in the areas when there is lots of red dots, you're just like, oh, okay, never mind. So how can public be sure that you're taking the public input seriously? Okay, and not just like brushing it off and then still continuing with what you have.
Okay.
What's your response?
We'll continue to come to the meetings and then see the results of.
We've only gotten through part of the comments on that, and we have a whole set of other comments that people have sent in. We're going step by
But we're
step.
not saying this, okay? Because we're saying that we're raising comments, there's lots of 100 pages of public comments, and you're just gliding off that, you're dismissing this.
No, we're not.
You've not made any,
I understand that you feel that way.
it's literally
Well,
happening.
how is there to feel
Change the
otherwise?
question of to let.
I feel like I've read all of these
jurisdiction from
comments multiple times and we're going over them and we're discussing them and
management.
we're acknowledging them in the text and we're making changes.
She should have stayed on board, huh, Lily?
It would make
That's what we're
no
working on.
difference if I stayed on,
Okay.
except I have less
So,
arrogance.
We're gonna continue the process. We're gonna get to your comments because we haven't gotten to your comments. We haven't gotten to the Heights comments. There's a whole bunch.
Well, I just talked about my comments, I'm not coming again.
So, we're still working through the process. This was just a review of some of the boards, but not the meatier comments that we received.
John does make a good point between a service and water management plan was done several years ago. It probably should be sent back to the creators and say, okay, look, we have some changes, we have some new information, let's fix it. So
2020.
that's something they can do.
The WAC, the Water Advisory Committee, actually has that on their agenda of something to do is to look at it and see where it needs updating. So it's actually on their agenda to take care of in the near
If and
future.
when they do, then we can make our references to that page number, content, whatever needs to be changed.
Because it's actually a link in the thing, it'll be a link, so.
Right.
Do we know when they're going to tackle that project?
Sure.
I'm not sure, because that's kind of difficult, because this is proceeding and that hasn't started, but that could impact this,
The
and vice versa.
The recommendation to plan for public water on Shelter Island over the longer term, I don't think that will change. WAC is fairly consistent in,
We're not gonna establish the need, there's no data.
Right, there's no need,
So
there's no
what-
data.
So what's that based on?
So,
Right.
WAC actually did discuss this last week, and there's a couple different reasons for it. So in areas with saltwater intrusion, for example, that is something that is not easily resolved. So saltwater intrusion, having a salted well, is not something that you can solve by just point of use reverse osmosis under the kitchen sink. Like nitrates are cheaper and easier to remediate at point of use of the kitchen sink than high chlorates in your well. That's a much bigger problem. It has bigger problems on the health and of your water system, on your personal public health. So consuming water with a lot of salt in it is obviously bad for you. So a lot of the concern is that the areas that are probably going to need public water are the areas that are going to have salt water intrusion, not necessarily high nitrate levels, because the high nitrates we can remediate over time and are easier to treat point of use. It's the saltwater intrusion that is going to have a larger impact, and it's going to be harder for homeowners to treat their water to the point where it's safe. So that's where the WAC looks at it and they go, okay, there is definitely going to be a need for public water in parts of the island. And they look at places like Montclair and Silver Beach and Ram Island, and they say these are areas that will most likely need some infrastructure in the future.
Well, then their document should reflect that rather than say just a blanket statement island-wide. So it's just
Yeah,
because,
that's fair, absolutely. Yep.
Unless they're thinking more in terms of this kind of district, so that they can have some.
Again, it's
kind of control.
language.
But the language matters, yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And it seems to me too, that there's a lot of these recommendations that if they were implemented, might not deal with the salt water, but it would deal with a lot of other
Right.
problems. And that might also lessen the need to even think about having to expand, except perhaps in this instance.
Right.
Yeah, not sure.
So are you saying that the new AI systems that are in are making a beneficial impact and reducing the nitrate levels in the center and lessening the effects?
Well, absolutely, I mean, they should be rolled out as quickly as possible because it's inexpensive and can be done quickly. And whereas centralized wastewater plant, it's pie in the sky, will never happen.
So when we think about, at least just for myself, when I look at when we talk about developing districts or areas, I think more saltwater intrusion. where there would be a central well helping the people that are on the shoreline. Those are the ones that I visualize when we talk about areas. Like, let's just take where you live out in Little Ramp. If there were a central location that could service, the people out there, I could see a system like that having its own district, servicing those people, plenty of water, not an issue. That's how I see myself, and maybe I'm wrong, just because that's the way I.
Yeah, I do too,
visualize it.
like, are you speaking,
So-
are you visualizing
For myself,
I know, but the waste side? First of
No.
all, no, you're saying the water side.
I'm thinking I'm thinking mainly water supply side. Is that Montclair Colony water supply, Silver Beach water supply? I'm not necessarily thinking nitrates. When I see about water quality, because Meg's absolutely right that the salt water is going to run through and kill your system, your piping, all those issues, and not necessarily the nitrates. And I think we're moving in the right direction with the systems, and I think that'll probably clear up on its own as we move forward. But immediately, the saltwater intrusion is an issue.
And sea level rise will
Well, and sea level rise will continue.
to move that
And that-
interface.
So maybe some text in here to kind of differentiate those two, which are treatable, which are really kind of serious, and we're going to take an entire system down would be helpful, so people can kind of see.
Yeah.
It's not an automatic blanket requirement.
Again, and part of it too is the solution for saltwater intrusion in your well is a reverse osmosis, where then you're concentrating that salt and putting it back in the ground, or you're taking it and you're pumping it somewhere else. So, the solution is just as bad as the problem.
Okay, so this is like what you just said is very controversial, right? Because reverse osmosis has a large amount of water that goes back, but it's not like you're creating new nitrogen, okay? It's basically, you take 9 parts of water, okay? 1 part of water becomes drinkable and the rest returns where it came from. So it's not as bad because that's what we want, right? We want to separate clean water from the larger volume of water, but we're not creating new nitrogen.
Would the water that go back have more salt? Is that what your point was?
referring to saltwater processing, so saltwater reverse osmosis, not nitrogen. Because if you're going to do nitrogen, it's going to be point of service at the kitchen sink, it's small. If you're doing whole house reverse osmosis for salt, depending on how much salt you're bringing in your well, you can have a higher salt concentration leaving, because it just keeps cycling.
So the Presbyterian Church went on a system to denitrify and the issues that they were having there. And they're mandated by the county to collect all the waste product. So everything that runs through their system that ultimately runs out of the system as a byproduct has to be collected and pumped and then discharged. I'm not even sure really where it goes.
It goes up to, I think, the Riverhead or Bergen Point wastewater treatment facility for processing, because.
Because it's a concentrated level.
Truck it out?
Yes.
Wow.
So I cannot talk about the specifics of this, but, things like what's proposed in this ground and surface water management plan that, pipe entire island over the next 10 years and require people to connect to it. And the comprehensive plan refers to, that's unacceptable. Okay? It's highly controversial. I would say
I don't see that though.
majority of people.
I don't see the whole island being piped. I see,
So he's just saying that that's what the report says.
right,
That's
that the
all.
report says.
And the comprehensive plan refers to it in several places.
I
We
thought-
agreed they're gonna go try and fix it, okay? We'll put them on that task and they'll fix that. So that's, what can we do? What do you want from us? We're gonna have them go back and relook at it. We can change the language, and then we can refer to it.
So how would we identify in the plan the challenge places that need help? How do you differentiate them from everybody else?
Which 11+ years from this ground and surface water, 11+ years, so that far out. Complete the build out of an island-wide water system, water supply utility system. Here's the key, as required.
Okay, so there you go.
As required, you have to be a little subtle here in reading this. You have to actually read it. For the meaning, there is the meaning, as required. Right, full stop.
Pam, I see you have a comment.
Yes, hi, good evening, everyone. It's a great conversation. I think everyone's touching on a lot of important topics. tonight. One thing that I'm curious about is how this island-wide wastewater management district even is in this draft? Because I'm looking at my notes going back to May. The May 15th meeting, this committee actually elected to strike it from the draft. So, and maybe that's what should happen. So I'm just gonna put that out there. I really don't know why it's in the draft. So now I understand that the WMAC is going to revise the stormwater management plan, or you'll go with the one that you have now,
Update it.
the comp plan, and they'll revise it after this comp plan is approved? Is that
At the moment, we're
what you're
going with,
thinking ahead with that?
at the moment, we're going with the version that we have, and then they'll revise it, and,
Yeah.
you know, the comp plan.
Sort of a timing issue. You don't know how it's gonna
We'll see how it'll
play
go.
out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay, that makes sense. And then the only other thing I wanted to mention, ask about, you say that there's an environmental zone map in this chapter. And well, there is to some degree, but I think the comment was also looking for more information on not just the flora and the habitats, but also the fauna and the wildlife, which doesn't seem to be on that map. And the areas of the critical environmental areas and the essential fish habitat areas are not on that map. So there is a map, but I also don't think it's complete, and maybe we could consider revising that to be more accurate to the situation of the natural environment on Shelter Island.
Okay.
I'll see what
Okay,
resources we
that's it, I
can
guess.
find.
And the other odd thing, just one other thing, the odd thing is the grandfathering of the irrigation wells. I mean, the irrigation systems, not the wells, although that is an issue like Lori brought up, but the grandfathered irrigation systems that people have in the nearshore overlay district. I mean, I think that I heard the supervisor mention that he'd like to see those weeded out and disbanded. I've heard him discuss this many times, so I'd like you just to look into that again and maybe ask the supervisor about what he has said about it in conjunction with the grandfather system.
Pam, when you're saying irrigation systems.
I mean,
you're
just double check. I don't need an answer.
No, but my question to you is, are you meaning the well-driven ones, not the cistern ones, right? Or are you talking about all irrigation in the near shore?
No, I'm talking about the wells.
The wells,
The ones that
okay.
are being driven by the wells. I don't, I mean, if people have cisterns, that's fine. I don't really have any trouble with that. How they're filling their cisterns is another issue, of course. Will they do, use a rain system or some way to refill them? That's a whole other issue. But no, the ones that are coming off of the wells right now, because we know that people have them.
Yeah,
They're the ones who have the greenest lawns in the summertime. It's easy to tell. So thanks for the
All right.
discussion. I'm glad you're going to continue this chapter on, I guess, the 5th, that would be on December 5th.
Yes,
Okay, terrific. Thanks. Have a good night.
you too. Kim?
Hi, sorry about that. I just wanted to follow up on the well-drawn irrigation. Do I understand correctly that the plan really wants to discourage the grandfathered irrigation systems, especially in the nearshore overlay?
Correct.
Thank you. And that would be for both residential and commercial.
Mostly residential. We have to look at commercial deeper because as Stella pointed out, there's a whole bunch of different commercial entities. And the DEC and the state and the county also have exemptions for certain types of businesses when it comes to irrigation. So we would look at that more in depth, but definitely for residential.
Those would be county or state laws.
Yeah.
Yeah, the recommendation is the town should update the irrigation law to eliminate well-drawn irrigation, irrigation. So we could change to shall.
Well, we just did that today.
did we?
We changed it to more definitive language as well.
Yeah.
But, I guess what I'm trying to say here is that commercial activities can be double, triple, way more
Sure.
than any residential activity. Therefore, if you don't include them in the prohibition, you're not really changing the biggest problems.
The question would be whether we
Whatever the law
could.
may be, which I'm curious about as well, because it's interesting that you say there are laws on this. I would just like to pursue that a little deeper to understand what that could mean here. Thank you.
Yeah.
Kim, are you looking to shut down Gardner's Bay Country Club and Goat Hill?
No, Ram's Head Inn, irrigation, like
Talking about
irrigation. Yeah, like irrigation, like
Commercial entity.
irrigation for hotels and businesses like that too. So I mean, when the DEC and the state and the county have exemptions, it's typically for businesses that rely on irrigation, like golf courses, like nurseries, like farms, places like that. They
She
have
didn't say that.
exemptions for. No, she said all commercial. So, yeah, that's
But
why,
Meg, thank you very much for clarifying that for me,
yeah.
because
you're
I
welcome.
was uncertain about the law and I was
Yeah.
interested in what you just said. So there is a distinction there, Jay.
Yes.
I just want to be clear.
Okay, thank you.
Is there a distinction in the law as well?
There is a distinction in the law as to what's exempt.
So Chequit might not be exempt.
Correct.
But the golf course would be.
Correct. So the DEC and the state all have, they're very clear in their exemptions.
Okay,
So we can look to that for guidance.
okay, good.
All right.
I would
anybody-
really like to know, just as other people have requested, some of these questions come up and then you don't know how they're going to be ultimately resolved or followed up on. And I thank you very much for following up. It's really appreciated because I know how detailed and hard the work is. So thank you again.
Thank you, Kim. Anybody else? Natasha?
Dr. Stowe, at the beginning of this meeting, you talked about the process by which the plan is going to go through additional revisions and public comment periods with the town board. And I just want to thank you. I mean, I think that should really be more public because I think a lot of people will really be happy to know that we're going to take more time and that there's going to be more opportunity for
We've
public.
always been saying that the public automatically has comments on the plan. I mean,
No, last section I asked if there would be a revision we could review and you specifically.
no, that's not what she said. She said, when the plan is presented to the town board, it has to go before the public.
Well, all I'm saying is whatever it was that was said at the beginning,
Makes you
I thought
happy.
it was reassuring and good news, because I think a lot of people have been really agitated about that. So thank you. And hopefully that can be more publicized because I think that kind of timeline for these very complex issues is important.
Yeah, and it will be publicized.
More opportunity for public comment. But first, we just need to finish these revisions and get this draft done so that then the public has that draft.
That's right. We're all looking forward to.
And that's the one that is going to go to the board, and then the board runs that public comment process.
So it will not come to the committee before the board. This is.
It will come to the
exactly the same that we heard last time, Natasha.
No,
I don't
Okay.
know.
all right.
No, I mean, what we heard.
Whatever it is, the more transparent you can be about it, the better.
Thank you.
My only other comment was the comment about all the red dots. When I look around the room, I see lots of clusters of green dots. I see, I was there and that just sounds very anecdotal to me that a whole bunch of people put a bunch of red dots on.
Oh, it was-
Bothers me just from a process point of view that we're dissing or we're not paying as much attention when there's a whole bunch of red dots because maybe somebody, this was a really important thing for Shelter Island. 140 people showed up and I thought it was a really good process. I think most people did. So I hope we're not dismissing things because we think that someone put all their red
We would
dots
think
on.
there'd be a couple more of those.
Yeah, I hope so.
But all the comments are so important to us, because that tells
And
us
we
what that red
appreciate
dot
how
and
you're-
green
Yeah.
dot is.
And listen, somebody went and wrote down every one of those comments
And we
in the
appreciate that,
document and it said green dots, red dots, multiple dots. So we know.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Anecdotal based.
I make a motion to adjourn.